pick your problem you care about most in the world, right? Whatever that is, and it's taking all your time and attention. And tell me how that problem is solved by arbitrarily creating more monetary units, more pieces of paper. Can that problem be solved? And when people are honest with themselves, I realize that problem gets worse. And then they start to see all of their imagined problems in the world are getting worse. If they go back 10 years or 20 years, and all these things they care about are getting worse and worse and worse. And so, okay, why are they getting worse? Because we're printing more money. So we're going to print more money and that's going to get better? No, let's compare that to Bitcoin, or let's compare that to the first global free market that ever existed. What that means is you have to create value in somebody else's terms to get to be paid.
What if the very way we're trying to fix the world is what's breaking it further? Think about the problem you care most about, whether it's the environment, failing education systems, rising poverty, or inequality. You spend time, energy, and maybe even your career trying to make a dent in it. Now ask yourself, how does printing more money, just adding numbers to a ledger, actually help? It might feel like a solution on the surface, but dig deeper and it becomes clear. The more we inflate the system, the more disconnected real value becomes. Jeff Booth, a leading voice in tech and economics, doesn't sugarcoat it. In a recent interview, he challenges us to confront a hard truth. Nearly every major issue we face today is getting worse, not better, despite, or perhaps because of, our endless money printing. From global debt spirals to eroding trust in institutions, the pattern is hard to ignore. When money loses meaning, effort and innovation follow suit. It's not just about inflation, it's about what we're incentivizing. Then Booth pivots to a different kind of solution: Bitcoin. Not as a get-rich scheme, but as the architecture for the world's first truly open, global free market, where value must be earned, not printed. Let's watch clips from Jeff Booth's explosive interview to gain more insight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for additional in-depth content. Thanks for joining us again. Enjoy the video.
How much Bitcoin do you truly need to retire?
I don't think very much. It depends on how long you can hold it, but I think it's, and I don't want this to be clickbaity, so please don't put this in the title, but I think it'll have infinite purchasing power eventually. And I can walk through why if you'd like.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if you said the current, all assets in the world currently equal about $900 trillion. Underneath those assets, is about $600 trillion of debt. If you include all of the liabilities and unfunded liabilities, but 600 trillion. And so if that debt went insolvent, all of those assets are worthless, right? Because everything would collapse. So people are measuring their assets within a system that debt is already insolvent, and they're pretending that debt is solvent. That debt requires more and more manipulation of money forever, exponentially more manipulation of money, so that the assets don't collapse and everything within that system doesn't collapse. So we're at the almost end of days. It could go on a bunch longer, but that system is getting more and more centralized, more and more controlled, and because it has to. We'll go into that afterwards. But every single asset, so instead of thinking 900 trillion of assets, think my house within that, this building within that. Well, if that debt went insolvent, this place would be worth nothing, like nothing.
Yeah.
Right? So there would be complete chaos. And so what does that say to you? It says it won't go insolvent in that way, because you wouldn't let it. If a government allowed the debt to completely collapse and everything to collapse and it to be anarchy in that way, every last man for himself, you would, before that happened, vote for more centralization and control. You wouldn't let the bank fail. So when I say it's going to collapse to zero, it won't collapse to zero. And instead, there will be liquidation, more and more manipulation of money. So from Bitcoin's perspective, if you just said, you have an open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy. And that's my kind of 5 criteria on what this is. So that system bounded by energy, as long as it stays decentralized and secure, the only thing that would change this is if somehow Bitcoin broke and wasn't decentralized and secure. But that system bounded by energy will reprice all $900 trillion of assets. All. It's not It's not, Bitcoin isn't within the system, it's outside the system, bounded by energy. There's a really important differentiation. You know this, many Bitcoiners know this, but many Bitcoiners know it, and at the same time, they're pricing it as an asset within the system. Okay, so it's outside. If you hold it in self-custody, if it stays decentralized and secure, bounded by energy, it is repricing that entire system over time. So what does that mean? So you take that 900 trillion today of purchasing power, not 900 trillion of paper money, of purchasing power, and you divide it by 21 million. And, or if you said that how many lost coins, you divide it by a smaller number. But let's say that number equals 43 million. Approximately 43 million of purchasing power in today's currency of Bitcoin. But what would happen from that system? From that system, you're living in the first global free market that has ever existed. And from that system, prices fall every year. Prices, as we automate, as AI moves faster and faster, as AI merges with robotics, as the free market adds more people to the free market and those ideas compete to provide us value, prices fall forever relative to that 43 million. So that 43 million gains more and more value forever. So if you had a small percentage of a Bitcoin in time, that would be enough to live forever. And it's just, all we're talking about is the timing of when that happens rather than does that happen. I put a bar, at least for me in Bitcoin, when I keep saying over and over and over again, if it stays decentralized and secure. That's my caveat to Bitcoin, repricing the entire system. What would not make it stay decentralized and secure? One of the things is exactly what you talk about. If in over 5,000 years in history, we've always centralized and we've always believed that inflation is natural and deflation is unnatural, then it's not Bitcoin, it's us that centralizes.
Is it human nature?
It's human nature. It's greed, fear, and fear. In fact, a lot of control mechanisms are created by creating fear in us. That then we we give our control, we give our time away through fear because somebody else will protect us, right? And so that's an age-old trick. It's how false flags work. It's how so to be able to create that fear. If I knew everything about Bitcoin and I couldn't stop it every other way, I did social attacks, I did climate, it's bad for the climate, I did all of these things. If I couldn't stop it, what I would do is I would try to co-opt it. If I knew everything that I knew and I was an adversary, I would try to co-opt it. I would say, I'm so for this, we're going to regulate it to make sure that our country wins on it. And I would get people to trust my centralized coin because it was safe. So all of the actions that we see here, and then what would those people be doing? What those people would be doing over time, many of the Bitcoiners today would make so much money in that centralized system that they wouldn't be Bitcoiners anymore. Right? They would be trading their, I've won, they would move over this. They would be moving out of self-custody into the system, trading the system to trade their Bitcoin for a piece of paper. And the Bitcoin would be centralizing as a matter of fact. And it would seem so normal because they were pricing from a fiat system, and that fiat system had to drive inflation. Yeah. So it had to centralize at a faster and faster rate. But because they would think they were getting rich within that system, it would co-opt them into that system. And I think many, many Bitcoiners are going to do that along the way, and they're going to sell, they'll do okay, everything else, and they won't be Bitcoiners. The question is how many more join and understand what Bitcoin really is for humanity. Yeah. How many people keep going? Because most of those people that do that don't run nodes. They're deferring their judgment to somebody else. And the people that run nodes, and more so in time, it'll be economic nodes. And how many transactions, what do those look like on the network? Those are the gatekeepers to Bitcoin. So now let's just keep playing this over. And this is why I talk about this all the time, because the two systems are incompatible. If you're measuring from this fiat system, it price go up, you are part of the centralization. I can't say that any other way. It is a first principle. You are part of centralization, right? Yeah. As you really come to understand Bitcoin and you become a node, you become someone at the gate defending this. Sovereign. You become, nobody tells me what to do. You realize that you're one of the people that is protecting all of humanity, moving into a system of hope, truth, and abundance. Most people don't know that. Some will know, some are going to get killed on the way through or destroyed on the way through, but you're moving your time into a system that's a competitive, cooperative, global system. So it's still competitive. The free market is massively competitive. You have to provide value to somebody else on their terms to get paid. But everybody wins by that. And the more people in it, more people win.
How much Bitcoin do you really need to retire? Maybe not as much as you think. In a world drowning in debt and inflated assets, value is becoming more illusion than reality. But Bitcoin operates outside that system, decentralized, limited, and secured by energy. It doesn't rely on promises or manipulation. As the old system keeps inflating, Bitcoin quietly absorbs value. Over time, even a small amount could be enough if you truly understand what you're holding and resist the urge to trade it away. The real battle isn't political, it's systemic. On one side, a crumbling world built on debt, fear, and control. On the other hand, an open network rooted in energy, truth, and freedom. Most won't see the shift coming. They'll chase safety, regulation, and price charts. But those who truly understand don't just buy Bitcoin, they live it. They run nodes, take self-custody, and reject control. Because once you experience a system built on integrity, going back to one built on deception is no longer an option. Let's watch clips from the interview.
But as long as Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, in other words, those nodes don't accept the control system, what would happen when that control system says, we're changing, it has to be the fiat Bitcoin? It would look like Bcash on steroids.
Yeah.
Right. It would look like 2017 on steroids. And in the first little bit, there would be a lot of people and threats of you have to convert. Right. But as long as those nodes and people and all over the world, and if you think about game theory here, I doubt that system. So that would be hyper Bitcoinization. That system trying to attack. Trying to attack Bitcoin, I suspect that system would then be liquidated.
It seems like, Jeff, what you're describing is that there inevitably is going to be some type of clash between the previous system, the existing system, the controlling system, and the system that we all want, which is Bitcoin.
And when you say we all want, I don't know if people have thought that many steps ahead, right? And so I know you want it, I know I want it, and we're public figures, and I know tons of other people, most of the people running nodes, I know what they want, and they're not going to, but if you asked most people on the street, they still think Bitcoin's a scam.
Well, they're worried about the left and the right.
They're worried, and they don't understand. And the first step into Bitcoin, it is normally the price go up, right? I'm making more money. Right. And so it's how many people, I just think about this as a giant funnel with 8 billion people on the planet. And as you go deeper and deeper into Bitcoin, you never go back up. Because going back to the other system after you really understand this one, it actually doesn't say anything about Bitcoin.
It says something about you.
It says something about you. But we also know throughout history, people cheat. And when I say cheat, I'm talking about from a game theoretical perspective. People will do what they need to do for their family, for their money, and they will say, I have enough, I can escape. But there is no escape from a centralizing system. So what you'd ask there, that clash, it's inevitable. And that clash has been going on over and over and over since Bitcoin was discovered or invented. There's been a centralized system, a control system, cannot allow Bitcoin because they're two different systems. You almost have to say it 1,000 times to yourself. The natural state of the free market is deflation.
Yeah.
Which means you've never lived in one. You're living in the first global free market that has ever existed. And as more and more people in this network, as more and more people build to it and move their time to it, we are both the map and the territory. It starts to expand, and you start to see a totally different experience than most people over here measuring their control system see. And you look at them and you think, for me too, for a long time, am I the crazy one?
Yeah.
Then I go back, and 10 years ago, I didn't really know this much about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so I was in that system thinking I was in a normal system.
Yeah.
And so it takes a while to really understand that.
Do governments fear falling prices themselves? Because it's like people are like seeking the solution from the wolf, right?
Instead of just saying government, you know, because Bitcoin is that people are trapped in a jail cell, right? Screaming at and I've said this many times, screaming at their captor while the jail cell is open because you have an open you have an open protocol. So they just would walk over any single person on the planet. So when we talk about would politicians see this, or would this person see this, or we just have to say, would you, right? Would every person see this? And I would venture to say a lot of Bitcoiners right now who call themselves Bitcoiners still don't know, right? And still they would fall for these traps, those people, and they would give that more energy because they're still measuring in a fiat currency.
Yeah.
They're still measuring in price go up.
Yeah.
Right. They're still centralizing. They're essentially moving from self-custody to non-self-custody to trade a derivative instrument. In other words, they're increasing their risk to move to the centralized system.
Yeah.
And so if many Bitcoiners are still doing this, and of course, politicians, of course, other people who don't know this yet are doing it. And this is why the system change is so chaotic and so hard, because it's actually not the system, it's us. It's our cognitive dissonance of where we're going to spend our time. And that's happening to 8 billion people on the planet, and it's going to take time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are going to fight this. So what would you expect to happen from this? If you've always lived in a system of theft, always, and that system had to centralize more and more because it's based on stealing that productivity that should flow to all humans and centralizing it up, then you have to ask who would win from such a system. And if you're giving more power to that system and complaining about the people who are winning from that system, maybe it's not them, it's you.
What is the role of government in a world on a Bitcoin standard?
It gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller as more of the productivity units move to the population forever. Now, why this is a hard thing to understand is all of these changes don't happen. One day we're on one system, one day we're in another, and everything resolves itself. It's constant resolving. But if you just ask yourself, or most Bitcoiners that have gone deep down in the rabbit hole, if you ask them, what does their life look like today versus what it looked like before, they would all generally say when they get to that point, what a beautiful, incredible relationships, everything. Their life is getting better and better and better. And I think this is also what creates some inside those Bitcoiners pushing harder and harder on their friends to try to get them to understand. And sometimes pushing their friends away because it's so incompatible. The ideas are so incompatible because they want to help their friends and feel what they feel. And then as they feel it, they just move to a lot of times a different group of friends. And through that system and how chaotic that's going to be like if you just asked, what would it look like? Many of these people will try to cheat the system because they don't have any recognition. So if you think of it, FTX, if you think of all of these things, if you think of Ethereum, if Vitalik just bought Bitcoin instead of, he was an early Bitcoiner.
Yeah.
He would own more Bitcoin than if he had so all of the people who've tried to cheat Bitcoin would have been better if they just held Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is once again knocking on the door of new all-time highs, with some analysts projecting a surge beyond $130,000. On the surface, it might look like just another bullish technical setup, charts aligning, momentum building. But there's a much deeper story unfolding, one that's invisible to most market spectators focused only on price. This isn't just about upside potential. It's about what Bitcoin represents in a world where traditional finance is stretched to its breaking point. Jeff Booth has long warned that the current financial system, propped up by endless debt and artificial manipulation, is unsustainable. As governments print exponentially more money to keep it afloat, the very foundation of value erodes. Assets are no longer priced by fundamentals, but by how much liquidity central banks are willing to inject. Booth argues that Bitcoin isn't just an investment, it's a parallel system, one that's decentralized, energy-backed, and immune to inflationary decay. So while headlines scream price targets, the real signal lies elsewhere, in the migration of capital, talent, and belief away from a collapsing system into one built on truth and scarcity. As the fiat world races to patch its cracks with regulation and centralized digital currencies, Bitcoin quietly continues to gain ground, not by force, but by design. Whether it's trading at $30,000 or $130,000, those who understand Bitcoin's role in the broader economic shift aren't just looking for profits, they're opting out of the old world and building the new one. As we wrap up, do you believe the traditional system can be fixed, or is it time to opt out? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video and hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.